AskReddit by Pretty Spinner. Doctors of Reddit, what's the worst thing you can do to your body? Nothing. Being stagnant with your body will literally kill you. Move around. Go walk. Bend your knees. Stretch. Do AskReddit. I read as I laid on the couch for what I thought was 10 minutes, but it's really been 4 hours. Untreated hypertension and diabetes. Oh, and cocaine crack. The coronary vasospasms will do a number on your heart. My brother-in-law had untreated hypertension. Did coke regularly. Oh. And smoked. Almost died from a massive cardiac event at the age of 37. A year out and he still has no use of his right arm and can only say about 100 words. Applying cow dung to an open fracture. Not my idea. Saw it happen. Dude died to sepsis in less than 24 hours. I feel up. I feel like that shouldn't need to be said. Why did I click on this? You might not have known that if you put cow dung on an open wound, you're toast. Ignore a clear, concise and increasing sign that something is going wrong. You have a weird pain in your stomach, okay, can be anything, no worries. You have a new pain, that stays the same or begins getting worse and worse, and after a long period of time it's still clearly there? Then go check. This post is making me feel sad today. I had a weird pain in my stomach for 3 years that I repeatedly reported to doctors. I also lost 50 pounds without dieting and had a number of other symptoms. Nobody listened. Nobody investigated. Yesterday, I finally got the results of an ultrasound I had to fight and beg for and was told I have tumors on my cervix, uterus, and kidneys and a large mass on my liver. I wish somebody had actually listened. Drink alcohol for a long period of time. Cirrhosis and ultimate liver failure are one of the worst deaths I can imagine. Long and slow while you get to think about the consequences of your actions while you lose your mind and or bleed to death. Dad passed away at 49 from cirrhosis and liver failure. A case of bud LT a day? Maybe close to 2. He had his problems and became shut-in for last 5 years of his life. His ankles were so swollen. His body was shutting down. God only knows what he went through behind closed doors. Mom just got sober this year finally. Super proud of her. Take care of your body please and don't drink often. Not enough sleep. Think of sleep like recharging your phone. Without it, you can't function. Had my first kid 4.5 years ago and he was a bad sleeper. I had no idea exhaustion could cause so much hormonal havoc on the body and brain. Eat a rock. Note that I have a PhD in geosciences. Can you give a seminar to my dog please? All these responses with alcohol, smoking, lack of exercise, poor diet, lack of sleep, how am I even alive at this point? Odds are you aren't at the age where it typically catches up with people, or your lifestyle isn't demanding enough for you to notice the ways in which your body has deteriorated yet. But it catches up with nearly everyone. And it often does so very, very fast when it starts. Knowing all the doctors I know, probably whatever they're doing themselves, drinking, smoking, lack of exercise, poor diet, etc. Knowing the theory does not make it any easier to put into practice sadly. I'm sitting here with a glass of wine and a spliff. I should consider my life choices more closely after reading this thread. Just remember not to use cow shit in place of a pressure dressing. As soon as I started working as a nurse on a vascular surgery unit, I lost weight and stopped eating sugar. I really never want to end up having diabetes. My god, so much horror comes from that. Many of my nursing colleagues have also lost weight since they've started working. More due to stress and skipping meals than cutting sugar. I think in general, nurses tend to live very unhealthily. The sleep deprivation, erratic meal times, stress and sometimes dehydration. Meth. I live in an area just riddled with meth. It's absolutely awful. That being said, I've seen as many people destroy their entire lives with alcohol. Not a doctor but a nurse. My tops are, leave any chronic condition unmanaged. Think diabetes, hypertension and high cholesterol, because they can cause serious, potentially fatal complications if left untreated or poorly managed. Next would be the obvious things like smoking, excessive alcohol intake, illicit drugs, etc. And my most controversial thing, that is one of the most dangerous things you can do, is bed share with your newborn. In nursing school I had a patient, late 20s female with T2DM, who said to me, verbatim, "I never let my sugar get below 500 because I feel weird if it's lower." I just blue screened. That was 6 years ago. I wonder how that lady is doing now. She is reason number 7932. I work with babies. Babies are go-ahead patients. Adults are the nightmare. Shooting yourself is pretty high up there. I saw a fair amount of NDs on trauma rotation because people treat guns like toys rather than highly effective killing machines. Remember, never point the barrel at anything you don't intend to shoot, and always keep your finger off the trigger unless you're ready to shoot. If you have a semi-automatic handgun, you follow those 2 steps. Drop the magazine, rack the slide to clear the chamber. I always look through, and some people may or may not choose to dry fire a few times while pointing at the ground to make sure it's unloaded. Make sure you follow those steps in that exact same order. Never carry in anything other than a holster, and make sure you know where your firearm is at all times because it's ultimately your responsibility. Can I piggyback off this to say, if you are feeling a little extra sad and have a gun in the house, find someone to hold onto it for a while. There are organizations that will do it if you don't have somebody you can leave it with. Smoking and not taking diabetes seriously. Both can cut your life expectancy by 20-30 years. I'm not a doctor but do work in vascular operating theaters. Majority of the patients are poorly controlled diabetics getting their toes removed, feet debridements, legs chopped off, infected non-healing ulcers etc. etc. And 80% of them would not put any effort to control their glucose levels by making healthier life choices. They would come back over and over again to get more of their body removed. Getting diabetes has certainly changed my ideas about things. I'm controlled now, but my A1C was 12 a year ago. Now it's 6. I'm working on the losing weight part, but my body vehemently disagrees that this is necessary. The joys of being postmenopausal. Dentist here. Stop smoking. Smoking leads to bad oral health and mouth cancers. Bad oral health can lead to blood infections, endocarditis, cardiovascular disease, pneumonia, pregnancy complications, etc. Just stop smoking. And yes, that includes the green stuff. For some reason my brain put a comma after pregnancy. I was like, hold up now, that's not how it works. Not a doctor, but a critical care pharmacist. 1. Smoke. 2. Alcohol misuse. 3. Uncontrolled diabetes. Not a doctor but a nurse, so I hope my answer still counts. Untreated diabetes. I often joke with my friends that I'd rather have a brain tumor than diabetes I wasn't able to treat. Essentially it's a gateway to some of the worst possible things to experience. From flesh rotting away dying to coma, anything is possible. Studying as a healthcare professional goes something like this. Oh, this illness who has a predisposition for it, you'll never guess. People often overlook how serious diabetes is and how important it is to properly manage it. I saw someone mention chronic hypertension. Also a good answer, basically in a similar category as diabetes in a way that it comes with a long list of complications that can be pretty severe and even lead to heart failure. English is not my first language, so if I got something wrong, fellow healthcare workers, please don't chew me out. Nurse here as well, this is my main one too. The smell of rotting flesh from people unable to heal the most minor of wounds paired with the scent of a freshly opened Mountain Dew is not something I will miss when I leave bedside. Google symptoms of every small problem you have. Will definitely give you high blood pressure while solving nothing. I've switched to edibles in the last couple days, second time in my life I did. The first was a couple of months in 2022, and I think this thread is helping me to validate that decision. People say smoking weed isn't as bad for you, and I never believed it. That didn't stop me from smoking, of course, but it stopped me from being okay with it and just wallowing in my addiction. So maybe I need edibles now to keep me away from the smoking. I think that's better than the smoke. Edit, y'all haters. It's not about the marijuana itself. Just because I take something a lot doesn't mean it's inherently bad for you. I'm also addicted to sushi and I'm not ashamed of that either. It's that I believe smoking, whether marijuana or tobacco, is so much worse for your body and lungs than just eating a bit of candy and having some psychoactive effects. But I'm glad every single other person here has unlimited control over their vices. Edit 2. Emmy and Snoop Dogg apparently. Now I really have no excuse but to stick with this Forks Moy comment /17 Wish Darbit news from Snoop Dogg. Good for you, that is an amazing achievement. This is a textbook example of harm reduction being effective. Smoke. I am not a doctor, but I am in healthcare, and some of you motherfuckers really need to cut back on alcohol. At least half of you reading this comment who think you don't drink too much, do. Assume you're one of them. Also, you people need to walk more. No, the walk to and from your car, and around the house, or around Publix, is not enough. But America isn't walkable, though brother, the floor is not made out of lava. Every now and then you need to get up and actually walk. You have 15 minutes to scroll TikTok, you have 15 minutes to walk. Orthopedic surgeon here. T2DM or smoking. Poorly controlled diabetes is one hell of a way to go. I've lopped off more feet legs than I can count. Secondary to diabetic foot wounds gone awry. Smoking negatively impacts tissues and healing. Obesity up there too. Every surgical and medication condition is made worse by obesity. My dad just died of diabetes. In 2019 they cut his leg off and since then it's been non-stop health problems. Heart attack, then stroke, then liver cirrhosis, then renal failure. The last 3 weeks they were pumping 4 gallons of fluid out of his body every day. He had a final heart attack and that was it. Well, at least he is no longer suffering. They say 80% of patients die within 5 years of a lower limb amputation. He lasted 4 years. Thank you for helping these people. Don't ignore it. Colon cancer screening is recommended starting at age 45 now, and if you're at average risk, no family history, no UC Crohn's, you can do colon instead of colonoscopy. Cervical cancer screening for everyone who owns a cervix regardless of sexual history. And please get your HPV vaccine. Get a well check every year and blood work as recommended. You can't treat diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol if you don't know you have it. Dentist here. I've put more people in dentures from Mountain Dew than meth drugs. It's addictive and so bad for your health and your teeth. Avoid that stuff at all costs. IQ nurse weighing in alcohol abuse. It's the worst death I've ever seen. Also strongly recommend don't do drugs. Having someone maxed on propofol, fentanyl, versed, all with generous boluses, in 4 points and still arching off the bed like the fucking exorcist will make your treatment team feel the need to sage the unit. Used to work in radiology. We had a patient with cirrhosis from drinking. Patient was 16 years old. How is that possible? Doesn't cirrhosis need like a decade of sustained abuse? I'm a pathologist and have done many autopsies. Obesity and smoking. Doctors of Reddit ? And 375 comments, none of which were made by actual doctors. They know we'd just get a second opinion. No need to waste their time. Judging from some of the responses here, I'm guessing doctors of Reddit is a very loose qualification. Poorly manage your diabetes with morbid obesity. You'll go blind, end up with renal failure and require dialysis, have limb infections that become permanent with ever-present open skin ulcers, silent heart attacks, early strokes, and every time you get sepsis or need to be operated, the morbid obesity and your slowly failing organs from destroyed microvasculature will both try to kill you. Proof is in the pudding. Regional and/or demographic plots of life expectancy vs obesity, and morbidity in non-compliant diabetes. It's smoking. It's not just the obvious stuff like lungs. It is a major risk factor for practically every bad thing that can happen to your body. As an oncologist, I'd say smoking. Not a doctor, but not getting your yearly mammogram is one of the worst things you can do. I was diagnosed breast cancer last year and they caught it early. Went for my yearly MRI last month and they found a tumor in the other breast. Caught it early again. Catching things early is so important. Stress. I tried to state other than the obvious like smoking and unhealthy diet, but the question was needed to be direct. The obvious is just enough. If you don't drink, smoke, if you have a healthy diet and exercise frequently, and if you have your screenings done, you've avoided most of the avoidable diseases, and that will give you a lot of years to live and also a much more enjoyable life. This is what recently happened to my friend. His family was begging him to get a blood test because he was looking awful. Swollen legs and bad vision. When doctors took his BP, it was hovering at 200 dart. Couldn't get enough meds in him to lower it. Ran a gamut of tests. His brain was like 50% white matter from his drinking. And the hypertension is what was causing the bad eyes. Few months later he started to get tingling in his face and arm. Vision started going bad again, so he went back. He had suffered an ischemic stroke. He's been slowly getting better. Thankfully his therapy just involves his eyes. He can see but has trouble focusing or making images out right away. He's 37. Totally preventable and terribly scary for him to go through. So people, take care of yourselves. As an anesthesiologist, broadly speaking, I would say 1. Smoking, and 2. Obesity. These two things are primary drivers for the worst and most common disease I see in the Youre. It also makes my job of getting people safely through a procedure much more difficult. Smoke, do meth, and ignore your diabetes. It's one thing to say don't smoke or don't do drugs or take your diabetes medicine, but another thing entirely to see the consequences with your own eyes. I've seen people struggle for every breath, utterly exhausted just trying to breathe. They shit and pee on themselves because they have no strength to get out of bed. Smoking. I've had a patient in severe heart failure, EF 10% for you medical folks, and in constant agony due to vascular disease in the legs. Anesthesia refused to put him under for surgery, so we tried to stent his legs but it failed. He went home on hospice. In his 50s. Meth. I've seen people with disgusting leg and foot wounds, going to dialysis 3 days a week, 4 hours each time, just to stay alive, gone blind and forced to quit their jobs because they can no longer drive, stepped in a fire ant hill but unable to feel the bites due to neuropathy until their legs were completely covered in welts, blood vessels diseased all over their body due to constant hyperglycemia, causing heart attacks and strokes. Diabetes. Not a doctor. 29. Just went to the doctor for previous stage 2 hypertension I found out about during an urgent care visit for a bad rash. And I needed to do blood work. Found out I have diabetes and hypothyroidism. I'd spent the last 3 years horribly depressed from a lot of loved ones passing away that I stopped giving a shit about myself. Ate too much junk, stayed in bed way too much, and now I'm paying the price. I literally just found these 2 things out yesterday and the doctor says I caught them both just in time. I thought I was lazy, Turns out it was fatigue. Please get yourself checked out before it's too late, especially if you suffer from mental illness. I'm dieting and starting to exercise now for the first time in years, and it's going to hurt and suck, but I want to be healthy again. Wish me luck, strangers. Not a doctor, but I've heard from reliable sources that replacing your blood with anything, including Dr. Pepper, is a decidedly bad idea. There are so many, but I will add one that most others won't add. I suggest don't play sports that involve getting hit in the head. If you don't plan on your kid going professional at sports, don't risk all the injuries and future pain from bad joints and old injuries. I've treated many ex-professional athletes. Unless they make it big and sock it away, they end up broken and poor. CFE is no joke. Overuse antibiotics.